Introduction to wildlife emergency and response. This goes through what is an emergency and what is not, as well as planning the capture and ensuring your safety. Just an introduction here. It says, why do we need to learn this? Well, many mistakes are commonly made, and first you need to make proper assessment, and that is the base of any action that you will do in the course of a rescue. Appropriate response and handling ensures your safety and the safety of the animal. You always want to be, yes, professional and show respect for the animal. You want to build your confidence through learning appropriately how to handle the animals, and well, again, that ensures your safety and the animal's safety. Always utilize common sense and the proper safety equipment. So, as discussed in previous presentations, your first step here, which we'll repeat, is before you intervene, you want to do an assessment. And yes, this can be very tricky, and in most cases, it may need to be conducted by a trained professional. But this is your step one before actually intervening. You always want to determine and log, who is intervening, the telephone number, so that we can contact them afterwards, the location of where you are, the setting, as well as the problem encountered and which species you are dealing with. A bit of the challenges in assessment could be determining what the species actually is, since misidentification can happen, the life stage, the problem, the actual causes, and the possible response. So like I mentioned, misidentification of the species can occur, and sometimes humans may misinterpret normal behavior and would actually be a non-emergency. Sometimes humans rescue animals that do not actually need rescuing, what we call kidnapping of wildlife babies, which is a common mistake. There also may be risk of injuries or disease transmission, and for that, making adequate training and use for proper equipment is crucial in this case. So depending on which species, location, and situation, there are about 10 different specialized wildlife organizations and individuals in Belize that work together with the Forest Department to help in every situation and every species. And this you can find in our Human Wildlife Conflict Pocket Guide, and it goes through in detail with more common emergencies. But as always, it's important, if you're not sure of what you're dealing with, if you can't assess fully, then you can always call the BWRC Wildlife Emergency Hotline at the number there specified, and we will determine what is the best possible response to whatever problem you encounter. So before actually going in and intervening, you must wait and ask yourself the question, does the animal truly need your help? So oftentimes, like I mentioned, humans think intervention is needed when in fact the animal does not need any help. And this is common with baby animals, when the intended rescues may turn into kidnapping, or in the case of baby deers, fawns, we call it fawn napping, whereby the parents would leave the fawn for a certain period of time, and that is actually normal behavior for deers. The absence of mother does not mean that the animal must be an orphan. Sometimes, they just leave their babies so that they can start to become independent. So it's important to learn natural history or the biology or behavior for all species of wildlife that we have in Belize. Before capturing the animal, make sure you properly assess the situation and the animal's actual condition. Determine that the stress that you will cause is warranted and the animal indeed needs to be captured and transported, because if it does not need intervention, then that unnecessary stress can actually cause the animal to go into a shock and would actually be able to kill the animal. It's actually more important to know when not to pick up an animal than to actually intervene. I can mention again, avoid kidnapping. Fawns and other mammals will stay in or very close to the nest for a couple of hours before the mom returns. If there is no visible injury, wait up to 12 hours and observe before intervening. However, if you are in doubt, call us and we will help you to assess that particular situation there. If a bird nest falls, you can either hang it back or reconstruct a new nest in its close proximity. Right? It can't be too far from where it was, because then the parents wouldn't find it. So it can be anything, a makeshift nest. As you can see in this picture here, even an old shoe that you hang up in a tree would actually serve as a makeshift nest. Again, another common non-emergency here would be fledgling birds, like this robin here that should be alone, and the fledgling here is actually learning how to fly on its own, and that's why the parents leave them for a couple of hours and then usually come back, feed them, take care of them, and that cycle continues. So here no intervention would be needed. Now, how do we know if it's an actual emergency or when an animal may actually need to be captured? If it does not attempt to escape when approached. However, there are exceptions for babies in nests and juveniles, which can be difficult to differentiate sometimes. So they will be somewhat less afraid of you than they will not react as quickly as the adults would. Adults, the natural behavior for them would be to flee from you. They would be afraid from you, and this is normal behavior for wild animals and humans. They see us as a threat, so they would usually won't allow you to go close. If an adult animal can actually be captured easily, that may mean that it does not need your help. If you need to chase that animal to catch it, it actually doesn't need your help. However, if it has any obvious injury, if blood is present, if you can observe an open wound, if it is not using a particular leg, if it's a bird and it has a wing droop, if it's not moving, if it has maggots in it, or if it has a wound with maggots, then that definitely means that it is an emergency and it needs urgent care, and you can now already start to plan your rescue in that case. If a bird remains on the ground when others fly away, if you have a group of flock of birds and you go close and the others fly away, then that may mean that if one stays behind, that means it needs intervention. However, there are exceptions, and we usually see this with vultures. Sometimes they may be feeding along a roadside and their wings would be lifted at an odd angle, We call this mantling, and sometimes they may be mistaken for injured birds, right? So it's important to know that differentiation there. Also, if it is entangled in something or if it's trapped and cannot come out on its own, then definitely it would need some sort of intervention. So again, if it has any obvious signs of injury, bleeding, protruding bones, cannot fly, walk, or escape, and wounds with maggots, then your first step is to call the hotline before you intervene and actually execute the rescue. The NWRA and IWRC are good references to know and to educate yourself when it comes to these types of situations. Extreme caution is required when you are dealing with bats and unusually friendly mammals. This could point out to rabies or other zoonotic diseases. And aggressive animals, you need to take extreme caution when it comes to dealing with those. So what to look out for in an animal is if it's unusually tame, if it's out during the wrong time of the day. If you find a bat during the day, it's usually not normal. If it's wandering aimlessly, it's not going anywhere or walking in circles, that may point out to neurological signs, and that would point fingers to rabies, right? And if it's aggressive or not responding, or if it's depressed, that would show something out of the normal, and that would all point out to rabies. Normal response to humans, as I mentioned before, is always fear and flight. They will be afraid of you and they will go away, right? So these would be the things to look out for when assessing. So how to respond? General guidelines around wildlife would be to know that wildlife will hide the fact that they are sick because they do not want to avoid looking weak. Reptiles especially would do this. This is called the preservation complex, which they would act that way in order for predators not to pick on them, and if they look weak, then predators would try to get them. Wildlife is not used to human presence and noise, and they would be highly stressed by our presence. So, and again, stress can lead to a deadly shock and kill them. And in this case, we want to be as quiet as possible. Try to move, not too sudden. Try to move slowly, sudden, and so that we do not stress the animal. Hence, we usually practice the hands-off approach for wildlife examination and assessment. And well, how can we tell that something is wrong? By simple observation, by using your eyes, by making sure you observe from a distance and observe everything that you need to observe before actually intervening. Another basic wildlife rule is to never stare down a wild animal in the eyes, and that is what predators would usually do, especially if they are prey species like gymnot deer. These species would be afraid of you if you stare them down right in the eyes, and could become aggressive. So best examination and assessment would be a very long observation and ensure that you don't miss anything. You need references to know what is normal and what is abnormal. And again, call the hotline and send us a picture if it is in your possibilities so that we can help you assess the situation. You can, yes, describe what you see, but sending us a picture will help us in the assessment of the situation. All right, so when you have properly assessed the situation on the animal, then your step 2 would be to plan a capture, right? Plan everything before you actually go in and do anything. So before approaching a wild animal, carefully plan your attempt. You have assessed the situation and determine what technique, equipment, and which approach you will use that will best work for your particular situation. Proper equipment should be used when capturing and restraining a wild animal, and you need to have in mind that you will need a container or a transport box as well as equipment to pick up the animal and transport it to a facility that will aid in the rescue of this particular animal. So you need to know what you will put it in and how you will take it there and how you'll be able to reach the facility with this animal. Evaluate the space that you are and the animal around the animal, and look for possible escape routes, barriers, or dangers to the animal, right? If you are close to a road and you're approaching the animal and the only way the animal can go is the highway or the road, then you need to avoid that and plan how you will be able to combat that issue. Using the body system is actually a very good idea, and that would ensure that there is a quick and efficient capture, right? Have a friend help you or someone else help you to actually capture and restrain and the things that you need to do in order to capture this animal. Some species are not meant to be captured alone. Eagles, you need at least 2 people. Medium to large animals, you will need various people. When it comes to crocodiles and other species as such, depending on the length of the animal, that is how many people you will actually need. I think it's a rule of thumb would be 1 person for every 3 feet of crocodile in this case, right? So starting with a good plan will help the handler in the control of the situation and ensure the safety of the handler and the animal. Assess your risk. Again, define what you actually want to do, identify the hazards, assess the risks. You reevaluate if the risks is actually worth the actual rescue in this case. Execute decision and watch and monitor for any changes. This is just taking these operational risk assessments into rescue, and you get to identify anything that could go wrong. So what do we see here in this cow, and probably is not common to expect it, but in this case you always want to watch out for things such as these. This is a rabid cow, and you can see the neck is it's not in the direction that it's supposed to be, and we can see some drooling here. Those things are not normal and would point to neurological damage, which can be caused by rabies. So what is rabies? Like I'm sure we have mentioned before and gone over with you. It's not present, thankfully, in humans. The last human case has been in the 80s. However, we do have livestock cases. We do have cases in cattle and different livestock species here in Belize. Um, Again, it can be transmitted by bats, so it's never a good idea to pick up a bat. And what to do is, well, if you are a person who will be handling wildlife animals, like forest department officers, or for example, if police officers, they would have a designated person, then it would be a good idea to vaccinate. And don't handle wildlife in the first place if you do not need to. If you have any exposure with any suspected rabid animal, then you would um, want to report it and raise awareness in this case. Animals to look out for would be, like I mentioned, bats, and any mammal species could be a possible candidate for rabies, and especially mammals like skunk, foxes, um, raccoons. These would be mammal species that you would want to look out for. So again, always remain calm and keep as quiet as possible. No sudden movements. Be confident, since animals can sense when the approaching person is stressed and anxious. Be deliberate but get cautious, right? Be confident, deliberate, but still, raise your guard, be aware of everything that can happen, and do not act impulsively, right? Be sure of what you will do. And know your limitations, and don't hesitate to get advice or assistance when you need, right? This is the best thing you can do. Know what you can and cannot do. Know the phone numbers again for the appropriate people or agencies that will and can help you with these situations. Your safety always will come first, and always expect the unexpected. Human health and safety comes first before the animal, unfortunately. Um, you will no longer be of service if you need medical attention. So always be careful and take care of yourself first before intervening for the animal. If proper precautions are taken, the handler can avoid injury and illnesses, and the animal safety will then be ensured. When injury does occur, it's a very good idea for you to wash and take care of your injuries. Always get attention, but this is usually due to improper procedures. Be prepared at a number of levels, and always use common sense. Never do something that you are not comfortable with. If you're not comfortable with it, then avoid doing it. Right? Call us and see what can be done, what are options. When dealing with wildlife, never assume that an animal will react a certain way. Always expect the unexpected. And again, familiarize yourself with normal animal behaviors. They are out during the day, during the night. If they are just playing possum, like we say, right? If they're acting dead, their flight or flight, what are their defenses, right? But be prepared always for a change from the normal. Know animal defenses and behavior. Most importantly, what are an animal's weapons? Before attempting to capture, you need to know what are the weapons that they can use to hurt you or hurt their prey, right? Beak and talons in raptors, eagles, hawks, all these things would have their beaks, and their talons would be very sharp. Claws, hooves, and legs of mammals. A deer can kick you, and depending on what species it is, you can use their claws to attack you, or their teeth to bite you. Powerful jaws and fangs in some reptiles. In the case of iguanas, it would be their tails. They will do that tail whipping. So these are the weapons that you need to look for. Um, in the case of this tamandua here, um, some would mistake it for a hug posture, right? But no, the tamandua is not looking to hug you here. That is his defensive mechanism. And once that tamandua is in his 2 feet, he is actually readying his most powerful weapon here to attack, which are those middle claws there, which are very, very sharp and dangerous for you. So always keep the head and legs of an animal away from your body, and it's an absolute must in keeping yourself and animal safe, to always wear and use appropriate safety equipment, right? If it's an animal that can scratch you, use gloves. Scratch or bite, you want to use gloves and proper equipment that we will be going over in the face-to-face presentations. If an injury does not occur while working with any wild animal, should be immediately washed with antibacterial soap and water, right? If you do get injured, and visit a doctor, contact your doctor as soon as possible and get the care that you need. Again, you always want to watch out for any bites or scratches, any injuries that you may get. Always be aware of zoonotic diseases. Always clean and disinfect any bites or scratches. Use protective equipment, and take all safety protocols to avoid any casualty. So again, familiarize yourself with any zoonotic diseases, rabies, distemper, salmonella, and assume that all animals may have diseases that are zoonotic that can be passed to you, right? So due to the risk of zoonotic diseases in wild animals, immunocompromised people, it wouldn't be advised for them to work with a wildlife. So if you have any immune deficient, or if you are immunocompromised, then it would be best for you not to intervene and help with these types of situations. Always wash your hand after dealing with any wild animal. You never know what you can get, so wash your hands properly, soap and water, to avoid any diseases. And when working with animals, if you do have that exposure more commonly than others, then you do want to ensure that your vaccinations are up to date, when it comes to tetanus vaccination and rabies vaccination, among others. So your most important tool here is to know where to get advice. And again, the clinic operates a 24/7 line for wildlife emergencies. So from even before assessment, you can already call us. We'll be with you on the line and give you whatever advice you need to do, and whatever course of action that you should take. Right? Sometimes we will forward some of these cases to the forest department or any of the partners across the country, but you can always call us. We will determine that and we will let you know. Here we have a very basic toolkit for capture, rescue, and transport. However, we will be going over this in future presentations when it comes to capture, restraint, and transport. So we will go in detail with the things that you may need and the proper protective equipment for whatever species you are dealing with. So this presentation was made by Dr. Isabel, in conjunction with wildlife capture, restraint, handling, and transport, by the Wildlife Center of Virginia, with modifications made by her. A great wildlife rescue reference would be this Wildlife Search and Rescue by this author here. So this would be great reading material for people who are interested. And for Capture and Restraint would be this one, Restraint and Handling of Wild and Domestic Animals by Maury Fowler. A couple more references and recommendations for you, and to ask us any questions at this point in time or in the future. Thank you very much.